For the World Today, this is James O'Neill. 34-year-old Katie Fox died after being stabbed in the neck during an unprovoked attack Friday night in Birmingham City Center. West Midlands police arrested and charged 21-year-old Jason Raphael, described as a black British national, with murder, 2 counts of actual bodily harm, and assaulting a police officer. Raphael was remanded in custody and will appear before Birmingham Crown Court on Wednesday. Police continue seeking witnesses and reviewing CCTV. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood condemned the killing, calling it a shocking act, and praised officers for their swift response. President Donald Trump has issued pardons to more than 70 allies linked to his 2020 election challenge, including Rudy Giuliani, Mark Meadows, Sidney Powell, and John Eastman. The November 7th proclamation, announced by U.S. Pardon Attorney Ed Martin, covers all federal charges connected to their efforts to expose alleged voter fraud and protect election integrity. The pardon excludes Trump himself. The move follows the dismissal of Trump's own 2023 election interference case and aims to promote national reconciliation after what he called injustices following the 2020 race. Senate Democrats suffered a political defeat after voting with Republicans to end the government shutdown through a clean continuing resolution funding agencies until January 30th, 2026. The deal, advanced 60-40, restores federal worker pay, but excludes key Democratic priorities such as extending Obamacare premium subsidies. Majority Leader John Thune secured the agreement, marking a setback for Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, who faces growing dissent within his party. Critics say Democrats prolonged a 40-day shutdown for nothing, deepening internal divisions ahead of the 2026 election cycle. U.S. President Trump accused the BBC of dishonesty and election interference after its Director General Tim Davis and CEO of News Deborah Turnus resigned over bias and editing scandals. Internal documents reveal top executives ignored evidence of politically motivated editing, including doctoring Trump's January 6 speech. President Trump called the network corrupt and anti-democratic. The BBC faces mounting criticism for institutional bias, recent Ofcom sanctions, and controversial programming decisions. Despite public outrage, Turnus insisted the broadcaster remains impartial and the world's most trusted news provider. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage launched Small Business for Reform, pledging to prioritize small and medium enterprises over corporate lobbyists dominating government policy. Speaking to 300 business leaders in London, Farage condemned successive governments for over-regulating small firms while catering to multinational interests. He argued that 99% of British businesses are SMEs, employing half of all private sector workers, yet remain ignored by policymakers. Farage vowed to simplify taxation, cut red tape, and restore fairness, saying big companies exploit bureaucracy to suppress competition and stifle entrepreneurial growth.
More than that, we will become a very strong voice and a very strong lobby for small business as an ongoing part of the national debate in this country. And it's a debate, frankly, that has not been heard for far too long. I feel passionately about this. I will certainly be heavily involved with this organization. This is in my blood. I know it's in yours too. And I believe we'll get a very large number of people come and join us, join this organization, help us build a council. Let's give this the single most ignored group of people in this country. 5.6 million businesses, 13 million staff, 50% of jobs in the private sector. It's about time they had a voice, and we intend to give them that.
This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
And welcome to The Protagonist. Nice to have your company too. I'm Mike Ryan on this, it's not a bad Tuesday evening. And in the UK, it's 7:05. Got to thank one of our guests. And in Germany, I think it's about 9 or 8, one of those. Anyway, uh, 8. There you are, just in the background. Isn't it fantastic? Team effort. What is the future of social media? On December 10, Australia will be implementing an under 16 ban on selected social media platforms. The specified platforms will change as the government sees fit. A ban for under 16s is on the table in the UK. Denmark has announced plans to ban social media for children under 15s. The EU is working on age verification tools, which could be part of a strategy to enforce age limits without a complete ban. And New Zealand's PM has now signalled he is deeply supportive of a ban. Will these bans keep our children safe? And what does all this mean for all users of social media? Will government succeed in co-opting platforms to collect an increasing amount of information on all users, which can and will be weaponised against us? Social media companies will clearly comply with government directions, given the fines and the threats to put them out of business. It's a good thing that greater regulation of platforms will demonstrate the deep connection between government and what we used to consider private entities. We saw that during COVID, just how effective they were as weapons of censorship and dissemination of state propaganda. What is clear is that governments will use child safety to implement the compulsory use of government ID. This low-hanging fruit, and this is a low-hanging fruit and must be called out and resisted. My guest, we're going to talk about lots, and my guests are just absolutely brilliant today. One from Germany, one from also from the UK, and one from Sydney. I think he's in Sydney today. First of all, got to welcome our guests. If you push the button, they're all happy little cherubs there. First of all, we're going to introduce John Ruddick. John Ruddick is MLC and New South Wales Member of Parliament. John, thank you for joining us.
Good to see you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Can you tell me, John, before we get into the other guest, your thoughts on the social media bans and Big Brother trying to wield its power and its oomph over, in this case, Australians?
Well, just yesterday, just 24 hours ago, a new organisation was created called the Digital Freedom Project. I was elected the president, and it's got two purposes. The first is to raise public awareness about how much the government wants to control the internet. And secondly, we're going to challenge it in the High Court. We're going to challenge the constitutionality of the under 16s social media ban, which is really an age verification for all Australians, and they're trying to shove us all into the digital ID. So this is just governments since history began, always wanted to control information. And it's particularly important in a democracy because we all get to have a vote. So they want to control what information we get. And so we are just in a non-stop battle. Now, the United States has got it right with the First Amendment, guaranteeing free speech, guaranteeing that the state won't interfere. And that is what every other country in the world desperately, desperately needs, a US-style First Amendment.
Our next guest is Sonia Elijah, independent investigative journalist. Sonia, thanks for joining us. In the UK, it's very obvious that the current administration want to shut down free speech. And in fact, it would be debatable whether they're looking after the interest of all Britons. What's your thoughts on and Starmer's just as bad as all the others. What's your thought on Starmer wanting to nobble free speech?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're living in really unprecedented times, Mike. I mean, obviously, I've been written dozens of investigative reports through the whole COVID period. And we are seeing a rise in digital authoritarianism. That's what I call it. And everything is done under the guise of safety. You know, we've heard so much, this is for your safety. We heard that during COVID. And this is just another form of that. And it's mixed. like we are seeing it's always, oh, it's for the children, we're going to keep them safe. And of course, children are vulnerable and we don't want them being exposed to porn or anything like that. But this is, I see it as a gateway to mass surveillance. And it really does have a chilling effect on free speech. And as we know, living in the UK, I think on average we're seeing 30 arrests for posts, for tweets that are considered offensive. So yes, we are living in unprecedented times.
Yeah, and Robert Cibis, filmmaker and book publisher and editor-in-chief of Oval Media. Robert, thanks for joining us from Berlin. What about the German government? They're never backward in coming forward into creating some uncomfortable places to be, such as being in Germany if you have a mouth and you have an opinion. What are they doing at the moment?
I mean, the interesting thing is that you have an overall global strategy in all these aspects, and that, in fact, if you listen to German media, you have the impression the German government will do decisions and be responsible of them. However, if you look closer, you see that they are just following EU regulations, and that these EU regulations are a twin to what is happening in Australia or the UK. So you have obviously, like with COVID, a global strategy of both digitalization and centralization and furthering, of course, surveillance. So what I see here is that you see build-up narratives, especially as Sonia stressed, a narrative. You want to protect the children, of course. You want to protect the children. You want to have peace, of course. You want to have peace, of course, and we want to have controlled migration and everything, just to have a pretext for you to give your ID at all occasions, as we in Germany and many other countries too became used to. If you wanted to go to the swimming pool, the public swimming pool, or you wanted to go to a restaurant, you had to show your, passport with your medical data, um, and this, in fact, is what we see. We have a merger of all parts of what makes us a social person. So, in fact, the digital ID and the surveillance, if you just enter a platform and so on and so forth, is part of a broader program of creating a complete and perfect part of a stronger grid of control.
John, as your alarm went off, hopefully you're not saying naughty, hurty things. Otherwise, they'll come in and grab you and pull you out of the office. Hopefully not. Just looking at in Australia right now, the platforms that are going to be hit by the ban: Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, X, YouTube, Threads, Reddit, and Kick. Now, it says here it's age verification for all. But I just want to read you this. This is from them. It says, question is, does everybody have to have the age verification? And it says here, no, age verification is not expected to apply to all social media users, but rather platforms must take reasonable steps to prevent users under 16 in Australia from having accounts. John, this has got as much chance as a snowflake in hell, hasn't it?
Okay, now, Mike, Parliament is sitting today. Is that bell too noisy at your end, or is it okay?
It
It's going
does
to go about
stand,
another
it
3.5
does,
minutes.
it does stand a bit disturbing. What would you like? Would you like us just to pop out and go into, and we can bring you back shortly, or what do you want
Yeah,
to do?
look, it'll finish in 3 minutes, so I'll mute you so it's not wrecking it, and then when it's finished, after you finish, I'll be ready in 3 minutes.
Okay, thanks very much. Just disconnect if you wouldn't mind, and we'll come back to you soon. Well, there you are. That's just an exciting time we have. It sounds like a torpedo is about to be launched from the U-boat or something. I'm not too sure about that. So that question I'm just putting into the for later basket. Now, Sonia, tell me about in the UK how they expect to actually, same question I had for John. And when whatever measures they bring in to stop children or stop people from looking at hurty things, and we're going to make sure you behave yourself, which also includes adults, because you can't be looking at anybody with opposing views of the current UK government. What sort of measures do you think they will be trying to do? And tell me again, because John would say they have no chance in hell of trying to make this thing work. What about your thoughts in the UK? I mean, because you do have the Met. They have stopped chasing crime, and now they're chasing those who do hurty posts. And it's a major crime, in fact, isn't it? It's terrible to say hurty words. It's just ridiculous. So,
Yeah.
what are they going to do? What's the UK government going to do? And what chance do you think this will have of working?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it working because people can always circumvent this by using VPNs, right? So you have that out there. It's really, I mean, we have the Online Safety Act that reached royal assent in October 2023. It came into full force this past July. And essentially, it's using very vague it's protecting children from illegal and harmful content. And as we know, those terms are so vague. Harmful. What is harmful? Who interprets that? It's, of course, those in power, the authorities. So, how would they bring it in, these measures? Obviously, these age verification tools, I mean, which is so disturbing. Obviously, children will have to take selfies, upload that, using these facial ID tools or facial age estimation tools. We're seeing, all this data is going to be harvested, and to what end? It's very ominous, and I see it as just Big Brother is watching you and is watching your children.
Will it work though? It's not going to work, is it? It's just not going to work.
I mean, it's quite impressive that it's both global and in very little steps.
Yeah,
So you see it over the years. It has been, and the bigger the crisis, the bigger the steps can be. As we saw with COVID, as we see now in Germany with the war with Russia. If there's a crisis, things go on faster. People are easier keen to accept what they wouldn't accept in a normal and free life. So a crisis from the management or from the powers that shouldn't be point of view is always a good thing. And I see that a lot of crises are coming at the same time. So we have a global economic crisis, and people even are afraid that people might have be hungry again in richer countries. If you see these scenarios, even if you're just afraid of them, then you might go there. At the same time, there's something I would really like to stress, and I'd like to have your point of view to it, is the digitalization is in fact in itself something which gives us power, which allows us, to talk together right now, which allows us to share information faster, and this is democratic per se. So as it's so democratic, the powers shouldn't be need to do a big effort to counter it. And I think it's a kind of counter revolution to the digital transformation, which can also help us to have easier access to information and to have a stronger free speech.
In Australia, I was going to ask John this, so I'll do John's part now. Oh, you're back again. That's even better. Let's press the button. There we are, John. That was fast. Was the motion passed, by the way?
No, I sat that one out because it was going to be lopsided. So this is more important.
Okay. Look, can you just tell me, John? I think Australia's biggest problem at the moment is the. We used to say she'll be right, mate. We don't really care. It'll be all right. We trust government, except for the groups that we frequent in. I haven't seen a whole lot of. I mean, I have discussions with my family, And they're saying, well, so what? And so what? Do you think apathy is probably one of our biggest problems at the moment in Australia? With I know that you would like all these things to stop, but apathy is a great weapon of the government, isn't it?
Look, everybody, when I was a teenager, many decades ago,
It
we
is.
all had to read George Orwell's 1984. Okay, it's a very simple book. It's a very good book, and Animal Farm's good as well. And it's sort of, and that was in the middle of the Cold War, and the government was sort of trying to teach us, oh well, look, we in the free West, we wouldn't do this. It's the evil communists that do it. But now that we've beaten the communists, our governments are becoming communist. Now, in terms of apathy, the truth is that for about 300 years, the West and Australia for over 200 years has generally been a particularly prosperous society. And so yes, that is the cause of our apathy. Now we had big governments in the Western world in the late 1970s. Then we had the Reagan and Thatcher revolution, which was not just in America and the UK, all around the world, including China and India and Africa and Latin America. They started introducing small government reforms, and the people started to prosper a lot more than they had. But then we've had what always happens and the government got smaller and smaller during the 1990s. And what happens when you make the government smaller, less powerful? More prosperity, general prosperity. Then we had 9/11. That's how we've got to make the government bigger for the terrorist threat. Then the global financial crisis, the subprime crisis, and stupid COVID. So we've now got a bigger, bossier, more intrusive government than we had in the 1970s. And look, if you go back to the 1980s, and you go to any stock market in the world, Germany or the UK or Australia or the US, out of the top 10 companies by market capitalisation, half of them were media companies. In Australia, it was News Corporation, it was Fairfax, it was Channel 9, and they were all big, big, big companies. And Kerry Packer used to refer to them as the rivers of gold, these classified ads and everything. Well, then 10 years later, the internet comes along. And then every couple of years, the big major media companies have to announce, we've got to have another mass layoff of staff, but this is the last layoff. Well, one of the big media companies in Australia, they said, we've got to have another layoff of staff. Now this is because obviously the internet is becoming more popular and more powerful. Every day, social media gets a little bit bigger and more powerful, and every day the corporate media gets a little bit weaker, and that's good. So, but what they're going to do, because social media is becoming so powerful, they crave to regulate it. They crave to have control of it. They do not want people being free. They want to monitor us. And that's where we're at. So now about apathy, well, yeah, you're right, Mike. 9 out of 10 people in Australia have no idea that 4 weeks from today, we're going to have this big, massive social media ban for under 16s. But it's going to affect everybody because you're going to have to prove you're over 16. Now, that's, I'm guessing 25 million people in Australia have got a social media account, and I think as Sonia said, it's very hard. The kids can get around these things. I've got young kids, and they also, it's all going around the playground about how they're going to circumnavigate these bans. Kids are smart with technology. So it's going to be like the old whack-a-mole, we're go and shut down that site. Then we'll go then we've got to shut down that site. So it's absolutely appalling. But the worst part about it is it's this. Often we know that left-wing parties are in favour of this stuff, but often these things were introduced by centre-right governments, the Tories in the UK, and the Liberal Party. It was good old Malcolm Turnbull that introduced this in Australia. These are meant to be centre-right people who are meant to love freedom, but it's not. They're the ones that often did it.
Well, we look at and I always think that you can always judge a government how good it is by how good the opposition is. And in the UK at the moment, you've got Nigel running around. I'm sure he's a celebrity game show host in waiting. Then we have in Australia we have the Conservatives. What do they do? They're all over the shop, and the same with most other countries. Just before we go to our next guest, I'm just thinking though that these having such a weak opposition that falls lockstep with the government. For example, the communications minister in Australia, the shadow communications minister, she said on television, Channel 9, one show, she said government needs to control all goings on the internet. And I'm thinking, I'm not hearing correctly. But you are supposed to be fighting for our liberties. And you have rolled over and you're sharing this great big bed with the opposition, which is a horrific thought, by the way. How do I mean, if our opposition keeps going down the way they are, John, the Labor Party can get through just about anything, and they are. If you look at renewables and the social media ban, and the talking about on Australia roads sitting on 80 k's an hour, they're doing these nutso things, but there's no accountability, and the opposition is just it's just pathetic. How do you feel about that? Because you are in the opposition, but you're surrounded by nincompoops.
Yeah, well, I'm a crossbencher, so I'm I normally vote with the Liberal Party, but I mean look, there's two ways to reform these things. There's the Donald Trump way, there's the Nigel Farage way. Now, what Donald Trump did was he has pulled off a political revolution in the United States, a revolution within the Republican Party. So the old party of the Cheneys and the Bushes and the Romneys, they're all kicked out the door. They don't even turn up to the conventions anymore. It's the Trump party, okay? Now, in the UK, Nigel Farage has taken an alternative route, and he says, no, let's not even try and rebuild within the Conservative Party. Let's start a new force. Now, good old Nigel Farage has been battling away for decades, and now, gee, every time I see the polls, he's further in front. So now what's going to happen? Look, and obviously Australia is, a derivative of the UK, and our political system is very similar to the UK. So it will be look, something's got to give, because the Liberal Party, I really hope they can turn it around. And for our international viewers, the Liberal Party is like, it's an odd name, but it's like it's the right of centre party. And I hope they can turn it around, but I am doubtful that they will. And that's why, good people are trying to start an alternative from the outside, but we wish the good people in the Liberal Party to return. I better go back on to mute, Mike.
Good luck and goodbye again. Here we are. This is like musical chairs. You should be sitting here pushing the buttons. I've got no idea what I'm doing. Sonia, I'm just thinking though, because the governments want to control our everyday lives, and I think we all agree that here, and they want to make sure that we can't say hurty words. If you criticise Islam, you're going to go to jail. In fact, they may deport you on the next ship to Australia. Hang on, that was done once before, wasn't it? So we'll have to just shoot you. So what they're doing is they're clamping down. They're in your face. They're in your house. What's wrong with parents? If you're looking after children, what's wrong with parents being parents and doing the deed themselves?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, you raise a very good point there, Mike. Exactly. It's the parents' role. We don't need governments taking the role of parents. Let parents do their job. And I find it really invasive. It really is. And I mean, like we're seeing, for example, like a lot of fallout. Even I think this past September, the image sharing site. This is the fallout from the OSA, the Online Safety Act, which came into full force over the summer. By September, you had the image sharing site Imgur blocking all UK users because they just didn't want to comply with the highly stringent regulations that OSA is pushing. So So UK users can't now use that site. So I mean, that's just a small example of that. And obviously, we know these platforms will be hit by I think 10% of their global revenue if they don't comply. And so what we have here, we have a really broad, the legislation is so sprawling. It's very broad, all user to user sites. But I just wanted to bring in the point of Agenda 2030, because I think all of this sort of mass surveillance control, right, which is what it is, it aligns with the global surveillance trends we're seeing is coming via Agenda 2030, which is a big push for digital control.
A very good point, and I think this is the risk of it. As John pointed out, you have transformation within political parties, you have different government in different countries, and you feel like, as I told initially, you feel like the German government would have something to do with it. But if you look closer, if you look in different countries, if you look around the world, you have the same agenda everywhere. So we can deduct from this that the governments don't decide. This, I think, is essential. So if we talk about Nigel Farage, if we talk about Donald Trump, Biden would have done the exact same thing, I think, regarding ID surveillance and digital twin, mass control through the internet. You have the same agenda everywhere. It is already a global government. I mean, this is not the official wording, as you know. The official wording is it is a global governance. We see a global governance, and the government is not that visible, but it is acting, and the Agenda 2030 is key to it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, and it's interesting how, if you go back just after COVID, I mean, actually, that's a bad example, but if you look at how things are moving on, they're getting towards a pointy end. They're all now in lockstep. They are. I mean, just the elite went just off the a left field observation here. And how nuts they are, and yet they're controlling our lives because Australia is totally under the control of everybody else now. If you look at the COP, how they bulldozed, they made 4 lanes of a highway all the way to where the get together is happening at the moment, and what they did, they bulldozed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these old trees just so that they could look after all the people who are driving to the conference, which is nuts. And then you have them landing. You see 400,000 jets, which again, in their mind, controls, destroys the planet. So all the elites, when they come out, all of the governments, when they come out and tell us that we have to do that, this is going to be for your child's safety. And I still go back to what I was saying just before. Where are the parents? I mean, surely. I mean, once upon a time, when I was growing up, we actually had horses, but they were all grown up. You know, we had the family there. Mum and Dad was there, and you sit around, you have a meal, and you talk about things and whatever, and they would know all about your school and that sort of stuff. I don't think it's happening a whole lot these days. And when it gets down to technology, Mum and Dad say it's too hard for me. Good luck with your next project. How do we change the attitude and take it away from government, Sonia, and give it back to the people?
I mean, yeah, it's just, I feel parents have been undermined so much by these big governments. It's just, I mean, even just, I'm just reminding myself of what happened during COVID with the jab, right? They wanted to, when they were rolling it out to the children, right? Going into secondary schools and administering the jab there. And they wanted to undermine the parents' consent. They wanted the children, oh no, if the children are old enough to decide whether they get the jab. I mean, this is just an example, right, of how horrific that is. And it's, yeah, because we are talking about control at the end of the day. And if you think about the family unit, it's the parents that have authority over the children, right? But government wants to take that place. Government wants to be everyone's parent. And I just find that incredibly Orwellian.
And it is. Robert, where do you think this is going to head?
I mean, it is obvious, and Sonia just made an extremely important point. Every totalitarian society had the destruction of the family as part of the agenda. It happened in Eastern Germany, it happened in Nazi Germany. As we know, you had these youth organizations, and the main aim was not just to indoctrinate the younger, but the aim was also to destroy the unit of family. So this is why you can pervert narratives. I think it's a good thing if people can live as they wish to, they can love and kiss who they want. But if you push the hedonist narratives, it can also harm the idea of a family. So this is why you could also see the woke agenda, just to give an example, I could give other examples too, as an overall narrative to destroy the identity of a family, and this is totalitarian because finally, what do we see? You cannot indoctrinate children or young adults if the family is strong, and as you certainly know from your own experience, religion, the way of living, the way of thinking is very heavily influenced by the people you live with. So best if you are isolated, if you live in a group, and if the cultural and political influences come from somewhere else, if you want to control everybody. Again, I think the fact that so many people can read, that so many people have access to computers, that like all information can in fact flow around the globe in seconds, easily, there is a counterattack on it, um, which is obviously very, very strong, and is using all this means of liberty as means of control. And I want to stress again, if we want to change something and understand what is happening, we have to stop talking about political parties in our governments, because they didn't decide it. What they do, in fact, is they sell it. There are just spokespeople, they are just actors. And it's not a coincidence that Donald Trump has an acting career and always, is a TV guest and host, and he did a lot of fiction in his life and is still doing fictions. And you see a lot of other so-called political leaders who are in fact not political leaders. So there are two means for me. I think you have to free from all of this. If you're in front of your computer or your other screens all day long, being angry about your government, you're wasting your time. What is Because it's not the government, and being in front of the screen is not living. If you do real things, if you just to stay with this extremely important example, if you raise a family, if you talk to people, if you do projects, if you just are active, I think it's very empowering, and also in the digital world, because digital means are powerful and we can use them. So this is why I think projects like the World Today News or other projects, are an example of how digital means are a means of liberation.
They would love to shut the entire world down, and the only stuff you can watch is the former New Zealand Prime Minister said that you've got to believe us because we know what we're talking about. Something like that, very bad New Zealand accent, sounding terrible, in fact. But if you look at they often come out with words or phrases as hate speech. Got to stop hate speech. What is alarming is that Pam Bondi said we have used, it's truly it's like Ben Hur on the stage of or on the set of Ben Hur. But anyway, if you think about what Pam Bondi is saying, that we will eliminate hate speech online. Doesn't that, Sonia, seem like they're heading down the same path as all the other governments? That we must stop you saying hurty words, and that we will control you. Now, the only way they can do that is to try and copy what everybody else is doing. There's no other way. So if they're going down that path, then we would have probably even look at in Russia with Putin. He's you now have to use biometrics to log in to do similar things. So it's not just one country, it's the whole world. And even though we have Donald Trump on the stage clapping his hands with his tambourine saying, I'm going to look after your freedom, the comments from Pam Bondi would show that it's exactly the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, it's very disturbing and chilling, those words, cracking down on hate speech, because again, it goes back to definition. How do you define it? It's if you offend someone, I mean, and we're seeing this play out in the UK, like going back to that statistic, an average of 30 arrests a day for offensive tweets, for saying hurty words. So it is, we're looking at sort of like a police state. Or the thought police, as going back to the George Orwell's 1984, we've essentially got the thought police here, when they should be targeting real criminals doing real crimes, right? They are scrolling the internet and looking at people's posts. I mean, it's what an incredible waste of taxpayers' money doing that when they should be arresting, the criminals, the murderers, the rapists. So I don't see it. And also in the UK, we have these digital surveillance, the facial surveillance, the vans, these police vans, where they take in real time, these facial recognition ID. I don't know. They scan the crowds and they pick out people. I mean, that also is extremely disturbing to see. And we're seeing that more and more on the streets of London, particularly. So it's this again, mass surveillance. It's becoming like China, right? Because obviously China is the other end of the spectrum. Are we all moving towards that? It's and these are countries like Canada, the UK, where are really old democratic nations, and we're moving towards these sort of totalitarian states, is highly disturbing.
John, good to see you again. I'm just thinking the all these age verification stuff, and you're logging in and showing your mush and that sort of stuff. That's there he goes. That's actually a surveillance, isn't it? It's government surveillance. And we had someone on the other day. They were saying that no, once you collect the information, it will disappear, and you will never ever. No one's ever going to have anything on anybody. And if you look at TikTok, for example, which they took it off the Chinese, gave it to Oracle, Larry Ellison's company, because they did not want China stealing the information. And what Larry Ellison does, he's the number one donor for the IDF. So he's going to do the same. But the actual result of that information could be much more dangerous to the individual, because Israel have got no interest at all in collecting commercial data. They want to know who's going to say bad things about them. And if you look at what's happening at the moment online in all countries, and with say YouTube deleting thousands and thousands of videos, if you say or provide evidence that things have been going wrong. So what we have then, John, is the government. They will use anything they can to be able to have the data on each individual and work out with algorithms what they're going to do. How do we stop that?
Well, look, this has been the impulse of all governments since the pharaohs built the pyramids 5,000 years ago. They have this lust to control. Now, I'm a member of the Libertarian Party. There's a lot of libertarians out there that believe that we can completely phase the government out over 50 years. Seems like an unrealistic utopia, but even if you don't agree with it, I think we should all agree that the government is way, way, way too big, and it should be contained. Now, the government should basically have no interest in what the citizens, how they want to communicate with each other. They should be an impartial observer. They should have no desire to refrain human freedom about who we want to communicate with and what we want to say. Now, you mentioned about Larry Ellison buying TikTok. I saw about 18 months ago, I saw Professor John Mearsheimer speak in Sydney. And he said that the biggest enemy of what the Israelis are trying to do in Gaza was TikTok. And there was about 1,000 people in the room. And he said it's because, what people are now seeing in real time, what's happening. They're not going to be reading about this in the newspaper. They're not going to be reading about this in history books. No, they're going to be seeing in real time exactly what was happening. And that is why there has been a massive collapse in support of there was a lot of sympathy for the Israelis after October the 7th, but that sympathy has gone because they did go too far. And it was TikTok that told us that. But so, yes, it is concerning that the new management of TikTok. But look, I have to say, Elon Musk, he is the world Olympic champion, the gold medal winner, the world record breaker when it comes to defending free speech. And thank God he did it, because now X truly is a marketplace of ideas, a free market. And and this is why it's becoming the biggest app in the world, because it's not censored, and it's good old Elon Musk. We're all indebted to him.
It's not true. It's what they do is content filtering. We got regularly censored on X, and it's very mean because you're censored without noticing you're censored. You see your posts, you think, okay, nobody's interested in it, but then if you log in with different accounts, you can see that X is in fact doing censorship. Sometimes posts are completely invisible. Sometimes you just don't see them proposed to you, even though you are following this or that person. No, what they're doing is in fact the modern type of censorship, where they don't tell you that they censor you.
Yeah.
And this is what's happening on all platforms at the same time. And X is very vicious. And you have to see, for a lot of people and also for us, X in a way seemed very positive because they gave a different flavor to, political views. And as it arrived, as it happened after COVID and after the ballot scandals and all of these things, they could be, free about these topics because they are not important anymore. But it is very, and why would you trust Elon Musk? Not just,
Well,
you have to be very suspicious because he's rich, but he's also the biggest contractor of the Department of War of the United States. He is just living from public spend. It is the perfect example of a public-private partnership with common interests to the US government and their imperial agenda.
well, Robert, I'm interested to hear that. Now, I mean, obviously, all platforms do have their algorithm, but I mean, what view? If you seem quite certain that there is still censorship going on at X.
Oh,
But I mean, what? But
no.
is it over certain issues are censored? Is it over political issues, or is there other?
No,
What are they censoring?
I tell you, the best way of not being censored is that you praise Elon Musk in the beginning of your tweet, and then you just add the information you want to make pass, and if it's aligned somehow, your post might be pushed. So the censorship is the pure fact that the platform doesn't even try to be neutral and doesn't even try to trust the users in what they share and what they like. There are some people which I never see, even though I follow them. I never see the posts, and there are others which I see all the time, but I don't even follow them. I'm not a follower of Elon Musk, but every morning I see through like several tweets of this guy, which I don't follow, and I don't want to see his posts. I never liked any post of him, but I see his post all the time. But I just answer your question precisely with one example. Um, um, we had a documentary about the 9/11 um, inside trading story. So, what stock has been bought and sold in the seconds before and after the attacks, and the days before. And it's some lead to the Bush family and some other leads, you can see, in fact, part of the criminals behind this huge crime of 2001. And we had a German version of this documentary, posted it on our tweet, on our feed, I wanted to say. And in fact, we didn't notice anything, but no other person saw it. I think we had like 50 views of a new documentary, which certainly would interest at least our followers.
Like John, we when we had TNT, and we've done some looking at, because we always get nibbles, but they've run to the hills at this stage. But the we with our we had 12,300 on X, and 2 years later we have 12,300. Now, we put through 50,000 interviews, just under 50,000 interviews, and we've worked it out that we had 10,000, probably 12,000 most times per hour of people either watching or listening. And that equates to well over, heading towards 60 million. And then we had 20 million downloads heading upwards of that. So you're anywhere between 80 and 100 million people watching. Now, for us to get no one, and truly, we've had people who hashtagged us and goes to no one, take us off, goes to everybody. So Elon is not the savior by any stretch of the imagination. And many would say, and I sort of agree, there's not a whole lot of difference, except that Elon's friends and those that can make him money, of course, will get the preferential treatment. And people like myself and Robert and others, I could interview God and nobody would know about it. And so what we have is the control, which is what governments want to do, but we have control by an entity doing exactly what they want. And if you say, I mean, look at YouTube, when they took off thousands of videos of anything against Israel just recently, even the company with, I forgot the name now, Link or something. Anyway, they're a international media company, and all their reports on bad things that Israel were doing just recently disappeared. So what we have private entities and government all probably doing the same thing, all in bed with each other. And that's why the Larry Ellison thing with Oracle was really interesting. They took it off the Chinese for collecting commercial data, and they gave it to an organization that supplies the IDF with all the money to make the bombs to kill people. So I think we're in a spot of bother, because there's the really bad people and then there's the really bad people. But John, I got to just mention to you, I just want to ask you this. In this age verification for all question mark for the big day on the 10th of December, which also then goes, by the way, on the 27th, which is 2 days after Christmas, middle of holidays, they have the next thing, age verification, and you have to verify who you are when you want to go to a search engine. And I don't see anybody talking about that just yet. But if you go to a search engine from December 27 in Australia, according to what they want you to do, is that you have to verify who you are every time you go to Google. So I'm just wondering the effectiveness of this. How can you ensure, unless you threaten with big fines, how can you ensure that these things are going to work? Because when you can't, if you want to go to check out something on YouTube or Google or whatever, you have to verify, or so they say, and I'll point out in a second how wrong this really is. But they're wanting you to verify who you are every time you use a search engine. Tell me, have you seen much about that lately? I haven't. And why would they do it on the 27th of December, John?
Yeah, well, that's the tell, isn't it? That they're putting it in between Christmas and New Year's, which is a particularly quiet time in Australia, even more so than the Northern Hemisphere, because it coincides with our summer holidays, not just Christmas and New Year. Look, Mike, I quite like I'm quite attracted to the Nepalese model of resistance, which was to rise up and really tell the politicians, hey, we want a free internet. So I thought, good on them. Now the what's going to happen with this social media situation is that there's two really, really insidious parts to it. The first is that obviously you'd be an idiot not to recognise that there are baddies on the internet that want to target young children. Okay, we know that. Now, and so parents, a massive part of being a parent today is to bring the kids up and say, hey, look, you've got to be really careful on the internet, and I'll help you, and I'll guide you around. So if under what Prime Minister Albanese wants to do is he wants to say that you're going to have zero social media experience prior to the age of 16, and then you're going to be thrown in the deep end. Now, if you've been on social media since you're sort of 11 or 12, you sort of get a feel for what's a scam, who's a baddie, who's your friend, etc., etc. But now what Albanese is proposing is that, now you're in the deep. You're 16. You're 15 years old yesterday. You're 16 today. go and open a social media account, and they're not going to have been sort of trained it. Kids are very perceptive with technology. The second thing is that parents are going to start to say, and look, the kids will get around the social media ban. I mean, they'll be the media is the technology is just too far ahead of the regulators. So the kids will get around it. Then the parents are going to be sitting back thinking, I don't need to care about what my kids see on social media, because the government's forbidden them from seeing it. So I know that they're not seeing it. That's what many parents will think. They've outsourced their child protection to the government. Gee, that's a really smart idea. So the kids are going to get into the sort of the underground internet, the really sort of, where there's no sort of, parental supervision, and it's going to be worse. So this whole thing is going to backfire. But look, I'm hoping, Mike, that we'll have the High Court challenge in February, March. And I reckon by then, Australians are more peaceful than the Nepalese. And I reckon by then, after 3 months, people are going to be pretty cranky. And hopefully the High Court justices will see that this is a bad law and an unconstitutional law.
Yeah, I want to get everybody's opinion, if you don't mind. This is the get out of jail card. It says here, this is for December 10. Reasonable steps. The law requires platforms to take reasonable steps to prevent users under 16 from having accounts. But they are not, and wait for this, they are not mandated to verify the age of every single user. John, while you're here, you might as well just, if you could tell me how that makes sense. Because 1 minute they're saying you have to. We're going to make sure and fine companies all this money if they don't ensure that the person under 16 can't do these things. And yet we're saying here they are not mandated to verify the age of every single user. How can it work?
Well, my hunch is they're saying that, Mike, because you know how many public servants you'd need just to be checking. You'd need 250,000 public servants, new public servants, to be able to go and verify everybody's ID in Australia. But look, they've got their technology. They will. If you say that let's say you're 12 years old, but you tell the computer that you're 24. I think the old E-Safety Commission is going to get around that, because they're going to be spying on what websites you go to, and they're going to know what websites a 12-year-old's likely to go to and what websites a 24-year-old's likely to go to. So they're going to be out. So it's just more and more surveillance, just more and more, the government having oversight of everything you can do. And I'm very pleased we're having these types of discussions. The public isn't yet. I think they're about to. And you know what? I believe we're going to win this battle. I believe we're going to win it in Australia and all around the world. I think that people will get fed up. And I think a lot more people are awake in the post-COVID era than were in the pre-COVID era. Now, I am disappointed more people didn't wake up. Okay. I just thought, how can you be so stupid to be treated like a farm animal like this? But a lot of people have woken up. And when you have woken up, you never go back to sleep. So I think we are going to eventually have digital freedom, but there's a battle ahead of us.
Sonia, in the UK, they're all, not all, but many are talking up the possibility of Nigel being the next Prime Minister. And by the way, I don't believe he will be. I think, again, it's not everybody has to vote. It's just the most that turn up decides which is going to be Prime Minister and who's not going to be Prime Minister. And I think the Labor Party will be on steroids to make sure that they win. So we have to have Reform and all the others, rock up also and make sure that they vote for Nigel, for example. I don't know if that will happen. I just looking at, and that's my whole career has been working out how they talk, speak, think, whatever. And I still don't think that will happen, because in the next couple of years, and you've still got 3 years to go, he can do a lot of things that are basically, once he's done all the awful stuff, Starmer can then do some good things, and people soon forget on how bad he really was. Then you have to take into account that Reform UK is actually a private company owned by Nigel Farage, which is really unusual for a political party to be owned by basically one person. So if if he has a hissy fit, goodbye reform. So I don't think my humble opinion is that he won't be Prime Minister. But regardless of whether he will be, in the next couple of years, you have Starmer doing exactly what he wants. And the amount of damage that he does, no matter whether you get in Genghis Khan, I mean, he's not going to fix it because it's already broken and probably beyond repair. What do you think?
I mean, I just wanted to bring your attention to this is going to with Starmer's with his big push for digital ID. We have close to 3 million people petitioning against it online. So if you get over 1 million, I think it's actually maybe even 100,000. You get a debate in Parliament. And in response to almost, I think we've got 2.8 million people signing this petition pushing for a debate because that's against the digital ID. Starmer's government, in response, said we are going to go ahead and push for digital ID by I think by the end of the government's term, at least by that during the next few years. So complete he's obviously not reading the room at all. I mean, the UK population, vast majority are overwhelmingly against digital ID, but you have this government that's completely not listening, doesn't care, won't have that debate. And again, they're using the guise of safety. And obviously, we've got this, we have the migrant crisis and all of that. And now we're seeing more and more on the news of migrants and on mainstream media where that wasn't happening before, because the whole digital ID was brought on the pretext for to do with clamping down on illegal migration, immigrants coming to the country. So, but then it's been a complete mission creep. So then it was no, this is now to access all the other services like benefits and all of that. So it is, yeah. I mean, it's a really insidious thing, the digital ID. But I mean, with your comment on Nigel Farage, I mean, I think I'd rather have Farage over Starmer any day. Yeah, but I'm not so deep into politics, but. I am probably I'm a libertarian, but it's just yeah, the way Starmer's government is being, implementing these things against the UK public is just really disturbing.
Robert, what do you think?
I'd like to jump on this because
Yes.
you have the population in the UK, and it's the same in all countries I know of, becoming more and more angry against their own government. You know, I don't see any Frenchman being in agreement with their government. In Germany, they don't care about opinion polls. They just have a top-down attitude, trying to say, "Look, we are saying where we're going to, and you don't have a say. We will decide." So what we have to do, I think, is to zoom back and to see what is happening at the same time in all of these spaces. So I, earlier suggested that we have to consider so-called politicians as being the spokesperson for an agenda which in fact is international, because we have the same actions in all of these countries. And we started COVID 196 countries doing the same illogical measures at the same time. And the same now with surveillance of the internet and the digital wallet and the digital ID and all of these things. So what I mean is the agenda must be, if you want to convert the global governance situation into a global government, must be that the people are angry against the government, they don't like the government, and then you will have the global government being the savior and helping us to get rid of all these, tensions with the government which we don't trust anymore. I think they're destroying national authority consciously in being so against what, in fact, opinion polls or petitions and the general public wants. It's the anti-democratic attitude is in fact part of the agenda. I think they want to have a revolutionary spirit. Don't you agree?
Yep. John?
Sorry, I was daydreaming, Mike. I apologise.
That's
sorry,
right. You were sleeping. I could hear the
I was
snoring.
talking about revolution, John.
sorry.
It's unfortunate.
Elijah. I don't Elijah. Sonia. Sorry. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing across the globe here many. I mean, but the point being raised about what we saw during COVID, all the lockdowns in lockstep, it was all part of that plan, right? And I mean, I've done recent Freedom Information Act requests to a UK department asking for NATO, what was NATO's involvement in this. And they actually wrote back saying, we have all the information, but we're not going to give it to you. We're not going to release the files. So we have this global coordinated effort on control, right? Because obviously lockdowns was all about controlling the public. I call it a big mass behavioral science experiment to see how far you could push people. But we're seeing this global trend, and it is we're seeing a lot of civil unrest across many different countries, people pushing back, and yes, maybe, yeah. I mean, I think the whole digital ID, which partners with digital currency, because obviously we haven't spoken about digital currency, that is all, that is two sides of the same coin. And that's coming down the pipeline, and that's what they want. They want ultimate control about how we spend, what we're doing, what we're writing online, and yeah, going back to Orwell's dystopian world.
Can I ask you as a final question for everybody? And the part of the beauty of social media generally is the anonymity. You can say what you want, which I think was also part of this problem. But regardless, you can say what you want. You can say it in confidence that information about you and where it's emanating from, it's not going to create any undue stress. If governments are now determining who is being part of social media and the data that transpires between you and your audience, the anonymity part is gone. It's just it's open slather. I mean, it's almost like out there with a shotgun from the government going duck hunting. So if we have little to guarantee our anonymity, and we have government overreach wanting to know everything about everything, doesn't that, first of all, John, doesn't that destroy or put in jeopardy social media itself? Because the anonymity part is gone, the trust is gone. If that goes, what is the future, John, of social media? Is it a thing of the past, and what will replace it?
Oh no, I think social media is the future. Now we're just going to make sure it's the good social media. Now, anonymous accounts are some of the most entertaining accounts, and it is a form of free speech. You know, in ancient Rome, which was their politics were quite similar to ours. People would get up in the middle of the night, they'd write graffiti they'd have political statements and it'd be graffiti. Now, the downside with being anonymous is that people take your message a little bit less serious. That's okay. That's the trade-off. But there's many good reasons for why people will want to have and not be anonymous on social media. The most common one will be, well, I am quite political. Someone will say, I care about politics, but my politics are different to my employers or my managers. So I want to say stuff, but I have to be anonymous or I might lose my job. There'll be business people who want to be anonymous because they don't want to lose their customers. They might have some unconventional political views, and if they put them out there under their name, they might lose customers. But the trade-off is, people generally speaking will give it less credibility if it's anonymous. But I think it's extremely important to preserve anonymity on social media, and yes, that is threatened by what they're trying to do here with this round of regulation.
John, you just mentioned good internet or good social media. Sonia, is there any such thing as good social media? And where do you see I mean, especially now, good social media with government overreach is very scary indeed. Not only government overreach, you look at the private entities that Robert mentioned before, such as we have the problem with Elon Musk doing what he does, and then you got Larry Ellison with TikTok and stuff. So I think the overreach from either the elite or the government is there. Good social media. I mean, I don't think that will exist anymore. What do you think? And what do you think the future of social media is? Sonia, we have nothing.
I'm
Robert,
sorry, because the internet was.
yes. What we do, Sonia, we'll just go to Robert because Robert actually heard that. So, Robert, you're now Sonia. Sonia, Robert.
Yes, before I respond to your question, let me just stress one important fact to what John said. In fact, regulation is, in fact, always helping bigger structures and harming smaller structures. Because to cope with the regulation means you need a team of people who take care of administration and so on and so forth. So what also is a problem with all of these rules is the more rules there are, the harder it is to enter the market. So what if we, however, as people want to have freedom of speech and diversity of opinions expressed through the internet, we want to have as many different platforms as possible and jump, from one platform to the other, and they might have different political views, different different agendas, and you have a competition of agenda. However, if you regulate, then you can make sure that the ones who are in the game stay in the game and nobody else will enter. So I think this is really, really important because a lot of people who are saying of themselves that they are politically left like the concept of regulation because they say, look, it protects us from the strong. And the opposite is often true. Regulation is in fact protecting the strong and harming the weak. And the future of is of course I'm optimistic because, as I said, the digital means are open to us. We just have to use them, and it gives us a power of communication, of analytics, of understanding what is happening, also of understanding who is in charge here, which is much stronger than without digital means and without these platforms. However, we have to be aware of our power and to see that these regulators and that these pseudo governments, which in fact are representing an agenda which is not elected, which is international, which is global, and which is defined by their wealth and not by their authority and not by their rights. That these globalists, in fact, have no power if we don't give it to them. The power is with us. And the strongest power is between our ears because when we think what we want to think and are not just ingesting other thoughts and constructs and worldviews, but just see what we really see and we are grounded in our lives, then in fact there's no way they have power over us. It is a virtual control, and the real life will always stay with us. The people.
Sonia, looking at what's happening in the UK, and if you look at history, by shutting down the town square and shutting the good citizens down, you have you have exactly what is needed for a revolution. In the UK, there is often talk, and a lot of our guests would enunciate that there is it's just a one scratch with a match away from having a revolution in the UK. If you take away the town square and their voice, that scratch is very, very close to setting fire to the forest. That also requires probably good social media, as what John said, but at the same time giving you a voice to say what you want. If you take that away, if you govern that, control it, what Starmer would like to do at the moment, what do you see the future? Two questions: the future of social media in the UK, but secondly, and more importantly, what do you see the future of the UK if it's so close to having a revolution, which is, if we were talking about this a few years ago, they'd say you're nuts. But now there is, if you look at the marches with Tommy Robinson, now there were 3 million that marched there, according to some, and 100,000 from the legacy media. But the police said there was between 100,000 and 3 million people, which is a fair difference anyway. I'd like them to give me a speeding ticket. You're between so-and-so and so-and-so. But regardless, a great deal of the English or of the people in the Britons, they voted with their feet that it's time to get rid of the government, and they won't do it. So what happens then to the UK? Do you have a revolution if they come down heavier on hurty speech, and the speech is just hurty words? Or do we have a submissive society that just rolls over and does exactly what is required?
Well, I mean, I'd say, and I obviously don't want to generalize here, but most British people, we're known for being polite and sort of following the rules and all of that. And obviously, we saw that play out quite a lot during COVID, during the lockdowns. I mean, there were protests in many other countries, which actually I reported on. Obviously, complete silence from the legacy media on that. But I didn't see I mean, actually, there were a few protests that did take place, which I did attend, but it wasn't so visually apparent everywhere. But for example, the Unite the Kingdom rally, you're absolutely right. There were millions of people that went to that march, and it got reported like the numbers were far fewer that reported on the BBC and things like that. So I don't know. I see if we see more and more stringent regulations for social media platforms, I think people will hopefully move offline, right? I mean, and actually physically meet in person, form communities, and we'll have actually maybe going back to the physical town square as opposed to an online one. Maybe that's where it will go if we're following down this draconian pathway.
It's interesting, isn't it? I was just thinking the good old days when we had the post office and you send someone a note, or what you do is you get on the phone and give them a call, or better still, in our case, John, we go down to the pub and have a conversation and not rely on social media and to be anonymous. Heaven help us in 20 or 30 years' time, which will be another great discussion. Where will we be? We'll have a chip in our brain if Elon has his way, which is scary for Robert and I very much. I've got to thank you all for being part of the panel. It's been fantastic. John Ruddick, thank you very much. Sonia, Elijah, thank you very much. And Robert Cibis, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Our audience has enjoyed it. We will do the same tomorrow with a different panel. This is The World Today and, of course, the protagonists. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.